Okay. Just a minute. Okay.
You got it? Okay.
You could be an honorary planning commission member today.
Get up here. Close. There you go.
The January Goochland Planning Commission meeting will now come to order. Mrs. Parker, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, we have a quorum.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gracious God, we come before your throne of grace with thanks and praise. We thank you for all the blessings of this life and liberty and family and friends and prosperity. We thank you for this county. We ask you to give this commission the wisdom and the guidance to take care of the business of the good citizens of our county. We ask you to bless this county, bless our state, and bless our nation. Bless our troops overseas protecting our freedoms. This we ask in your name, Heavenly Father. Amen.
Amen.
Everybody had a chance to look over the minutes? Any comments?
No.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve minutes?
Second.
The motion has been made and properly seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, we will now open a citizen comment period. And the purpose of this citizen comment period is for the citizens to comment on anything that's not on tonight's agenda. Okay, if you do, you have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the mic, state your name and address. Okay, I'll start the citizen comment period. Okay. With that, no takers, I'll close the citizen comment period. Okay, Ms. Parker, do we have any requests to defer additions, deletions, or changes to the order of public hearings?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, open. Public hearing item number 1.
Our first item tonight is in District 1, CU 2019-00021, application by Big Dog Resources LLC, requesting a conditional use permit for mining operations at 4385 Shannon Hill Road on tax map number 3-1-0-5-0. The property is zoned agricultural general A1 and is 45.84 acres. The conditional use permit is required by section 15-102 of the Goochland County zoning ordinance. The comprehensive plan designates this area as rural enhancement area.
Thank you, Ms. Barker. Members of the Commission, Tom Coleman, Principal Planner. As Ms. Barker introduced, the first application is a conditional use permit request for mining operation. This is located in the western part of the county. The subject property and all of the surrounding properties are located in an A1 or an agricultural district. And the subject property and all the surrounding properties are in an area that's recommended as a rural enhancement area in the comprehensive plan. Looking at the aerial photo, a couple of things to highlight, and I do have another photo later that zooms in on a little bit. There is one structure on the site that is going to be removed during this process, and I've sort of highlighted in yellow sort of the approximate location where the mining activities would occur. And there is one residential district that I'll talk about a little bit more later that's located to the west of the site. First, the history of mining activity here. Gold was discovered in 1835 by John Moss, and the property is known as the Moss Mound property. Gold mining activities took place for about 100 years from the 1830s to the 1930s. Historically, shaft mining techniques were used on this site, and several shafts were created. The mine shafts were previously filled under the supervision of the Virginia Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy a few years ago. As far as the proposed mining activity with this application, the applicant proposes to rework old workings that were spread on the ground from previous mining activities. And they would remove gold and clean the removed workings of contamination, which the primary contamination is believed to be mercury on this site. The activities will not create new pits or shafts. Portable centrifuges would be used to separate the gold. The activities are regulated by DMME. There's no acids or blasting used, and removal of the mercury would be monitored by the Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. There was a previous application approved in 2014. No mining activity took place under that approval, but I did want to highlight some of the differences between the application that was approved in 2014 and what's being proposed for you this evening. In 2014, there was an approval to separate the gold from the rock through crushing and gravity separation. There was going to be a self-contained open pit mine at a depth of about 75 to 150 feet. Large volumes of water were proposed to be used to facilitate the gravity separation, and then the site was going to be restored to wetland-type environment at the conclusion of the activities. With this application, this proposal would not utilize any large open pits, or it would also not use large volumes of water. The reclamation process would take place on one small area at a time, and as mentioned earlier, the centrifuges would be used to facilitate the gravity separation without involving any new pits. As mentioned earlier, there is a house that's located approximately 900 feet to the west of the old mill site. There is a use standard in the zoning code that any mining activities have to take place at least 1,000 feet from an occupied dwelling. So one of the conditions will require them to identify that 1,000 feet before they start their mining activities. There was a community meeting held in November. Mr. Alvarez, former Supervisor Alvarez, was in attendance, as well as 10 citizens. There were several concerns from the attendees, and that included the depth of the excavating and the safety measures that would be utilized to secure the site, the potential for additional contamination of the soil or groundwater, what was going to be the mining process, obtaining environmental studies, environmental monitoring of the water table, what would be the timetable for these activities, where was the area that's going to be excavated, what were the mercury levels in the soil, and was there going to be construction of a retention pond. Those are various items that were discussed at the community meeting, and no one at the community meeting expressed opposition to the application. With the CUP conditions, a couple of these I'll kind of slow down and read through because they're not conditions that would typically be brought forward to the commission. The first condition would allow the mining to take place on the property subject to these conditions. The second one would require a plan of development. The third one would require that the applicant comply with all state and federal regulations. As we get into the following ones, a lot of these are part of the CUP, but they're also related to requirements that would be set forth in various state permit approvals. As far as A, they would not be allowed to dispose of any off-site materials on this property. B, they would not use any toxic chemicals, hazardous substances, or acids in this process. C, trash or debris would not be allowed to accumulate on the site. D, would require them to mark boundaries if the mining activities weren't going to approach within 100 feet of a property boundary. E would require them to get a permit to access the road from from VDOT, and also to make sure that they maintain any access road in compliance with the county requirements, especially Gooch Fire Rescue and community development. Let's get through F. I'll slow down a little bit and read through that one. As far as drainage, it says that no impact to natural drainage ways is allowed unless approved by the Virginia Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy or the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. All intermittent or perennial streams must be protected from spoil by natural or constructed barriers, and a 50-foot buffer zone of undisturbed vegetation or undisturbed forest must be provided to maintain on both sides of all streams in the mining area. Buffer zones must be maintained in addition to proper sediment control. Similarly for G, relates to topsoil storage and drainage control. Prior to any land disturbing activity, temporary sediment control measures must be properly installed where necessary around the disturbance perimeter. Topsoil and overburden must be removed and stockpiled or used to create diversion berms around the site perimeter. Any constructed berms must be no higher than 5 feet above the natural ground elevation. Berms cannot be constructed within 25 feet of adjacent property boundaries without written permission from the adjoining property owner. As areas are completed, the berms will be utilized to obtain final grade and promote vegetative cover. Mining must be conducted in such a manner as to direct all surface runoff into a retention pond, and all stormwater drainage within the disturbed area would be diverted into the retention pond. As far as screening, they could use a number or some combination of the following to screen the mining activities. That would include undisturbed, retaining 100 feet of undisturbed forest, use of natural topography, constructing berms or planting trees. I would require the closure of any roads or open pits or anything that have to be closed or gated off at the conclusion of their activities. J would require a groundwater protection plan. 4 would require any permits that they obtain or apply for with any federal state agencies. They would need to provide those to community development. 5, that reflects earlier what I was mentioning, there is a requirement that any mining activities be 1,000 feet from a dwelling. Number 5 would require them to mark that 1,000-foot boundary. 6 would require them to mark the eastern and the southern boundaries. Those are the closest two property lines to where the mining activities would take place. Number 7 would prohibit any blasting. 8 would limit the hours of operation to 7 to 7, Monday through Saturday, and prohibit any mining on Sunday. Number 9 would have put an expiration date of February 28th, 2024. And number 10 is sort of our standard condition as a date as it relates to the sale or lease of the property. I did want to mention these conditions are comparable to the conditions that were approved in 2014. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Mr. Coleman, you said that one residence was within the 1,000 feet. Which one would that be?
Pardon?
Which resident was in, or was within the 1,000 feet?
Right here, if I could direct your attention, there's a dwelling right here. It's about 900 feet from the mill building.
Mm-hmm.
And so the code requires the mining activities to occur 1,000 feet away. So, that would be pretty close, might overlap some of that area. So they would just have to demarcate that 1,000-foot perimeter.
Actually, that's my house.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
The 1,000 feet, as I see it on this map, you've got an arrow extending to the mill site where the circle is. So if you swept that around, that kind of deletes about 1/3 of that amount of space for mining.
I would say it could impact it could impact their operations, and that's the reason we want, before they get started, they have to mark it so we would understand where that impact would be.
Okay.
I would hesitate to say it's 1/3 or something.
Okay, but it just looks like a good portion of it.
We're working off an aerial photographs, so the measurements are going to be approximate, and so it could impact their activities.
Got it.
This is pretty heavily regulated by DMME and DEQ, isn't it?
Yes, and we inquire, and they do consider it a mining activity. Therefore, it falls under their regulations, and they work with in my conversations with them, they work with the Department of Environmental Quality, VDOT, they work with other state agencies to make sure that all the state agency regulations are being appropriately followed.
Not federal mine?
The federal, no, correct. I mean, for example, if there's wetlands impacts, for example, they would require them to demonstrate that they're meeting those federal requirements.
Okay. So would the applicant like to speak? Is the applicant?
I'm fine, sir, unless you have questions.
Question?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, we'll now open a public hearing, and that's for anyone who wants to express opposition or approval of this project. Come forward, one at a time, state your name. You have 3 minutes to speak. And And if anybody wants to speak for a group, let us know who else you're speaking for. You'll be given extra time, but the people you're speaking for will not be given any time. So I'm going to open the public hearing.
Good evening. My name is Reine Rock, and I reside at 5090 Shannon Hill Road. I am just a little concerned during the presentation. It looked like item 3J addressed groundwater protection plans, and that is my major concern or interest in knowing more about this project. It's my understanding that the majority of my neighbors in the Shannon Hill area have wells that are less than 100 feet deep, and it turns out that when they started digging for water in my area, that my well is over 300 feet deep. So while this is physically located a significant different distance from my property, I still have concerns about what could possibly happen to groundwater in the area. This past summer, we did have a lightning strike in the area that actually disrupted our water significantly for about 48 to 72 hours, where we were just literally pouring nice bright orange water out of the tap. So I've seen what can happen when groundwater gets disturbed, and I would like to see that gone through a little more. I don't think the gentleman really read through that portion all the way, and I am extremely concerned about groundwater in the area.
Anyone else? Not hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Would the applicant like to address that concern?
The concern on any of what we're doing approaching groundwater, we're well above the water table. Everything that we're doing is contained. There's no contaminants being released. The actual danger to groundwater now is what's currently there without it being removed. Everything that we're doing is clean and self-contained in the retention ponds, and the water is tested in the morning and the afternoon to ensure that our parts per billion of mercury in the retention pond are well below standard. If they're not, if they're elevated, even mining acids, if any of that is elevated, I have to rectify that before we continue. But everything stays within that retention pond, no deeper than 15 feet. So it can in no way encroach in water table. If I was to get anywhere near water table, 80 to 100 feet down, Department of Environmental requires a significant water test, where they actually do an entire environmental study on that before we can do any kind of work.
So you're essentially scraping the surface of the...
Yeah, what happened when the original mining was done, and this is all throughout the central Virginia from Appomattox all the way up to Spotsylvania into Maryland, they didn't have the equipment that we have today. They had to use mercury. Well, 60% of the gold that they caught, they lost. With that went 60% of the mercury they used. That's why the state this year, and this has happened a number of summers, we get heavy rains, you get the warning, don't eat the fish in the James River because of mercury contamination. That's where it's coming from, all the old mines. What we're doing is actually removing that contamination because it wasn't caught when the original reclamation was done, that all the old workings were spread across the field in about a half acre, what's a 150 by 150 area, and it all contained mercury, and they spread it across the field.
And how do you remove it?
The centrifuge, when we clean all the dirt in a big ball mill, it releases the mercury and the gold from that dirt and that soil, When it goes through the centrifuge, it spins at 3,000 RPM. And just like being on one of the rides at a fair that spins really fast, it increases specific gravity or G-force by 200%. So any heavy metals, coppers, mercury, magnesium, gold, they all get stuck to the sidewalls. And there's little riffles that it gets stuck in. And it has a 100% capture rate.
And you separate the gold from the mercury,
Well, it catches the mercury and the gold and any heavy metals.
right? And then what do you do with the mercury?
Then I have to take that, what comes out of that centrifuge, and I retort the mercury out to get the mercury away from everything else. And then we have to document the amount that we got and then dispose of it.
And how do you dispose of it?
Well, either the state will take it and they'll dispose of it, or I have a place out in Norfolk that takes it and they basically recycle it.
Thank you.
They should just get rid of it, but
It's moved off-site, though.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
The separation, is it done on-site or off-site?
on site.
On-site.
Yeah, you have to do it on site. That's the only safest way to do it.
Okay.
Last thing you want to do is move it and contaminate someplace else.
Thank you.
Sir, can I get you to state your name and address?
Paul Bush, 5134 Cartersville Road, New Canton, Virginia.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, what's your vote?
I move we approve it as it's written.
I approve.
Motion's been made and probably second that we approve as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Ms. Parker?
Our second item tonight is in District 5, CU 2019-00018, application by Beacon Towers, VA LLC, requesting a conditional use permit for a 199-foot communication tower at 966 Hermitage Road on tax map number 58-1-0-31-0. The property is zoned agricultural limited A2 and is 25.53 acres. The conditional use permit is required by section 15-112 of the Goochland County zoning ordinance. The comprehensive plan designates this area as rural enhancement area.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Members of the commission, I'm Jamie Sherry. I am the Assistant Director of Community Development. The application before you this evening is for a conditional use permit to erect and operate a 199-foot telecommunication tower. The location, the subject property is located at 966 Hermitage Road, which is just west of the intersection of Mannequin and Hermitage Roads. The proposed tower would be located in the southeastern portion of the county. The comprehensive plan identifies the subject property as rural enhancement areas. To the north and the west is similarly designated. To the east is designated as single-family residential low density. The property is zoned A2, agricultural limited. To the north, you have the Broad Run subdivision, which is the area that is zoned RR, which is residential rural. And to the south, you have Cedar Run Estates, which is similarly identified as RR. Here we have the aerial photo with the subject property identified in red. As you can see, it is mostly wooded. There is a single-family dwelling on the property. The area that is circled in blue is the proposed location for the tower. The applicant, in his application, stated that there was a need for this tower because of no available towers that would make the proper coverage or a building upon which to locate. We have developed a tower, it's actually a communication tower map. So all the existing towers are identified in with the green symbol. There are also antennas that are identified, so they're not all strictly your traditional communication tower. The proposed site is in that blue area. Balloon test was conducted last summer on June 19th. The applicant, in addition to doing the balloon test, floating the balloon, they took 14 different photographs towards the proposed site. And of the 14, they were able to identify one one photograph that actually identified the tower. This is taken just south of the intersection of, Dover Branch Lane and Hermitage Road. So like on the map, it's actually identified in the green right at the end of that road. Oh, sorry, can you go back? Do you see at the end of Dover is that green icon? On June 26th, there was a community meeting held. Board members, Mr. Alvarez and Mr. Peterson, along with Planning Commission members, Mr. Myers and Mr. Rocket Charlie, the applicant and 20 citizens attended. Citizens' concerns included the visual impact of the tower that it will have on the area, the potential impact on housing values, the potential health concerns, and that the area already had adequate coverage. In addition to that, we also received a petition from area residents. There were 27 signatures, and the petition stated that the tower should not be located in a residential area, and the tower will have a negative visual impact on the area. We've also received a number of phone calls and emails with some similar concerns. This is the concept plan that has been submitted. The concept plan identifies the compound area, which is in the square. It's a 60 by 60 area. It will be located in a wooded area so that the screening of the compound will be from existing vegetation. It also identifies the entrance to this site off of Mannequin Town Road.
Mannequin Road.
Excuse me, I apologize. Got Mannequin Town on the brain. The proposed location of the intersection this is a conceptual plan. It would actually have to meet all VDOT site and access management standards. As I mentioned, the subject property has one dwelling and is mostly wooded. And the tower will be located approximately 500 feet north of the intersection of Mannequin Road and Hermitage Road. Access to the tower, which I identified, will be by a 30-foot easement with a 12-foot gravel access road off Mannequin Road. And the tower will be screened by existing trees. So this map identifies the locations of the closest housing to the tower. The tower is identified by the red icon, and as you can see, there are two houses that are approximately 300 feet from the site, one just to the northwest and one to the southeast. The 370 is also identified right there, but the one to the north is one of the ones that are in the Broad Run subdivision. That's the closest one for that subdivision. The conditions that are being presented to you tonight are our standard conditions. I will run through them, but they are consistent with the other towers of similar size and structure that we've presented to you and the board has approved in recent months. Number one, the use would be for a communication tower. The conceptual plan as presented, as I presented in the presentation, is identified as Exhibit A. It would have to be generally consistent with that. A plan of development would be required prior to construction. Number four, the maximum height would be 199 feet. All regulatory agency requirements, specifically the FCC and the FAA would have to be required. Your typical 199-foot tower does not require lighting unless the FAA or FCC identifies a reason for that to be. Number 6, security. The base shall be secured by a fence. Number 7, the tower is not allowed to interfere with any other kind of communication systems, including television, radio, satellite, and public safety communications. The color of the tower shall be non-reflective, a neutral color, same with any conductors or wiring. The buffer, as I mentioned, for this particular site will be using existing vegetation. I will have to go through the plan of development process, and anything in the future, if it were to die and the visibility, the screening would not be there, they would have to replace it. Number 10 is, I'm not going to read it. It's essentially talks a little bit. It actually identifies the rights that the county has and the process upon which they would pass those rights on to the next applicant who might be able to co-locate on the tower. The construction time limit, if approved, the project shall commence in 2 years of final, construction of the approved project shall commence within 2 years of the final approval and be diligently moved towards completion. I had mentioned the internal access road. What was presented does meet the requirements. The condition talks about the requirements that public safety would need in order to be able to get public safety equipment back there in case of an emergency. Number 13, this conditional use permit shall expire 90 days after succession of the tower for communication facilities. The property owner shall be responsible for removing the tower prior to that 30-day period. And lastly, this condition deals with in the event that there is any sale or transfer of the lease, there's a process to make sure that everyone is notified because the conditional use permit does run with the property. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. The applicant is also here.
I'm confused about the one dwelling on the property.
Okay.
Can you show me that
Sure.
slide that has the
Sorry, I'm going to.
red boundary?
So, sorry, I think one more goes back to, yeah, so the clearing, I'm going to try and use I do it every time, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I've got to get this right. I think that's right. There we are. That is the dwelling that is on the property. I did not measure that dwelling when I gave you my distances because I figured that's the subject property and the property owner is closer than.
That's a residential home?
Yes, sir.
And then this little cutout at the bottom, that is not the property, right?
Right here?
No, on the red, with the triangle.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that is a neighbor. That is a neighbor. The subject property is within the red, and that it would be a adjacent neighbor.
And how close are those two properties to the tower?
So the one that is in the cutout
Yep.
was 300 feet,
Okay.
approximately 300 feet. I did not mention the property. I did not measure the property owners, but it looks to be somewhere in that same ballpark. So I measured this one, I measured that one, I measured one here, and then I measured one up in the subdivision area. I did not measure that one, I apologize.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I have a question.
Oh.
Normally, when we hear these, it's always stated that if the tower falls, it stays on the property.
Yeah, the applicant did present that in their application, an engineer certified
stay
that it
on
wouldn't
that
fight.
property.
Yes, yeah. All right, thank you.
The applicant?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Jonathan Yates with Beacon Towers. My address is 105 Broad Street, Charleston, South Carolina. I also have with me Mr. Barton Deputy, who is our RF expert, and Mr. Nicholas Wyndham, who is our sort of real estate expert and helps us with the siting. I'm pleased to be before you tonight, but first and foremost, I have to say, this is my first tower application in Goochland County. I have never encountered such a professional and nice staff that I got to work with. Miss Anita Barnes is not here tonight, but if I asked her 100 stupid questions, she never laughed at me. She said if I asked 101, she would, but I thank her, I thank Jamie, I thank all of them. They've been absolutely super. What we're doing tonight, and we're going to go through it very quickly, and Martin's going to talk a little bit about the need. But when we come in, we're coming in tonight on behalf of AT&T and also their FirstNet service. FirstNet, if you're not familiar with, is the First Responder Network Authority. It shows how quickly our federal government works. In 2004, the 911 Commission determined that we had a huge problem in this country with public safety folks being able to talk to each other and communicate during a disaster. Well, it took them to about 2014 to decide to get to work on it. But FirstNet is rolling out. It's going to be very important for Goochland County. Martin's going to touch on that a little bit, and I think he's got some FirstNet questions, FAQs, to present to you. The property tonight is an incredible, we work on towers all over the Southeast. And what we do when we come into community, we have to site first for where AT&T needs to be. First thing we look at, are there any existing towers? Is there a tall building, water tank we could use? Well, there wasn't one here. We then, this is where Nick and his team come in, we try to find the best property possible. We're not going to please everyone. The room behind me is packed. These are nice people, but they're not, we had a great meeting in June. We agreed to disagree. But what we're going to talk about tonight is whether or not we meet Section 20. Do we meet the county rules? Because that's all we can do when we come in is follow your rules. And I think you'll see after our presentation, while we have made a lot of folks upset, and we didn't mean to do that, and we don't want to do that, we did meet Section 20. The property in question is owned by the Manitou family, Bernard, Lewis, and Angelo. Bernard lives on the property, and this property goes way back in his family. He's part of the Sneed family, and if you know from that area, a lot of that area was Sneed property. This particular property has been in the family since the 1860s. In fact, Bernard's father was born in the old house on the property in 1914. The old abandoned house is still there. The old abandoned home place is still there. It's 25 acres. As you can see from the aerial, really good tree cover. Many, many years ago, Bernard's father planted some corn on the property, but since that time, they let it grow back, so you have a wonderful mix of oak, walnut, hickory, and pine. From a location standpoint, and I'm not going to steal any of Martin's thunder because he's good at it and I'm not, it was exactly where AT&T needed to be, where they needed to be to bring the service to this area and where they needed to be to deploy FirstNet. Getting into Section 20, we have a 25-acre property, zoned A2. We talked about the collapse, and as you did, Commissioner, it's in our package. I'm in a high-tech business, but I'm pretty low-tech, so I want to show you. This is from Virginia PE Michael Plavinzak. Michael certified a couple things that are very important. First and foremost, Michael certified that the facility will meet the ANSI TIA 222G and Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code wind speed of 116 miles per hour. Further, Michael certified that it has the structural capacity for AT&T, FirstNet, and at least 3 other wireless carriers if they want to provide coverage to this area. Finally, Michael certified the maximum fall zone radius at 128 feet. So it would be contained, the fall zone radius will be contained inside of the Manitou property. Roughly, when you look at it, we're about 500 feet from Mannequin Road, 500 from Hermitage, and then we're about 498 up to the north. The closest property line is to the Zara Foundation to the west. We're about 141 away, but again, we designed the pole with a 128-foot fall zone, so it would fall well inside of there. What we do, there are two parts to a tower, and the first part we want to talk about now is the pole itself. This is a monopole. That's a good thing. Towers come in a couple different flavors. You have the old guy-style towers that I was used to growing up, where you have guy wires going every direction. We have what we call the lattice or cell support, which are 3 or 4-sided steel structures. And you have the monopole. What is a monopole? A monopole is basically a pylon. It's this kind of thing you'd see in front of a Hardee's or a Walmart. It's just a pylon pole, but instead of putting signage on it, we put cell equipment. In this case, the top will be AT&T at 195 and their FirstNet, and then reserving space on down for their other competitors in this market. The second component to the tower is we fence in a 60-foot by 60-foot area. In this case, we're going to use an 8-foot chain link fence. We're going to top it with three strands of barbed wires and anti-climbing device. And then what we're going to do also, we have this incredible tree cover, but just to be safe, we're going to come in initially with 25 Carolina sapphires. We like the Carolina sapphire because it grows thick and quick. We're going to put them in there just around the fence line. We're only going to take out the tree cover we need to get our access road in. And that access road runs about 583 feet from Mannequin Road. Then we'll put in the sapphires. As we go through the development process, staff might say they want more landscaping. We're fine with that. We're fine with that. What we do in all these cases is we will have a 60-foot by 60-foot compound, but we lease 100-foot by 100-foot to give us all that extra buffer. If we need to put more buffer in to help shield it, we'll absolutely do that. To get here tonight, we had to do a lot of other work. We had to go to the FAA. Again, I apologize for the low tech. This facility was reviewed and approved by the FAA. They made 2 very important findings. The first one was a determination of no hazard air navigation, and the second one, no lights. I know I got a lot of folks in the room who want to give me a necktie party afterwards, but I can tell you, I've done a lot of these towers across the southeast. The only time I had a complaint after a tower was about the air nav lights. People don't like the lights. The good news, this one has been approved without lights by the FAA. So when you go through Section 20, and that's all we could do, and again, I couldn't have gotten through it without Miss Anita. When you go through that, if you look at all the criteria, we meet them. Are we going to make everyone happy? No, but we meet them. But as you review this and deliberate tonight, and now I'm going to turn over to Martin for a minute. He's going to talk about the need and why we couldn't, because again, if there'd been a tower there, a tall building or a water tank, we would have gone on it and I wouldn't have had to come tonight. But look at this property. It's 25 acres. Incredible tree cover. Been in the same family since the late 1860s. We did a balloon test, which Miss Jamie put up there for you. Very rarely, when I do a balloon test and we take 14 pictures, very rarely, almost never, is it only visible from one location. Usually when we do the 14 pictures, it comes up every other picture or every third picture. What we had in our favor there was the size of the property, the incredible tree cover, and the incredible tree cover in the surrounding area. I know I'm not making a lot of people happy tonight, but I feel strongly that I followed all your rules, and I feel that the Manitous, I'm not from Goochland County. I'm from Charleston County, South Carolina. I have no rights here, but I feel strongly that the Manitous, with their history with the county, I feel they do have rights. And I feel that while this might not be popular to some folks, they do have the right because they meet Section 20. Going forward, if we get to do the tower, it's about a 45 to 60-day construction period. After that, AT&T comes in maybe 8, 9 times a year to just do a little maintenance, not very often, so we have the access road to do it. And also, once the tower is up, if it was up right now, you wouldn't see it because it's dark outside and it doesn't have air nav lights. The tower does not produce any light, noise, odor, fumes, vibration, or glare. What does it do? It brings coverage. It brings coverage to AT&T customers in that area. It has capacity for their competitors. Why is that important? Across the United States today, over 80% of all 911 calls start from a wireless device. Why? You get into trouble on the road in the old days, you'd have to go find a phone. I get in trouble on the road, I pull out my phone. I get 911 coming to me. That's important. When I was younger, much younger, because you can see from my age, I was in a remote part of Charleston County one night, and I had a blowout. The scariest part of that night was walking up to that farmhouse door and knocking on it, hoping for a phone to call my parents and not knowing if I was going to get my head blown off. I have a 20-year-old son. He has a blowout. He pulls the phone off the hip and calls me. Wireless in general, we're seeing across the United States today, 50% of all households are wireless only. 42% are a hybrid, where you have both the landline and the wireless phone, and only 8% are landline only. Martin has brought this up many times to me, and it's something we hear a lot across the country. We become the fourth utility. People need power, they need water, they need their sewer, and they need their wireless. So I want you to, it's going to be it might be a long night. I know there are a lot of good folks here, and I have nothing against these folks. They have their opinions, and they have a good right to them. But I want you to take a hard look at this one. Look at the property we found. Look at Section 20, and tell me if I missed a rule. I don't think I did. Martin, you want to come up and talk a little bit about placement?
Name and address.
I'm sorry?
State your name and address.
Okay, Martin Deputy, 365 4th Avenue, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate your time. I'm trying to make this quick. One of the things I just wanted to mention, the Goochland County Broadband Internet Initiative. We were looking at, this has got a lot of, I got to commend you. It's really looking forward for the goals that are similar to the handout I believe that Nick just gave you. The goal here is for universal broadband internet access service throughout the community to support businesses. It dictates a speed of 21 megabytes, which is what wireless is far exceeded at this point now, and with 5G it'll be over 100. The delivery method, it says it envisions a diverse network consisting of multiple fiber and wireless options depending on the existing structure and the geography. And then it talks about cost, and the most attractive proposals for broadband service are the ones that provide reasonable prices. They take into account underserved areas, which we have, and a consideration also given to customer choice and options of various service levels. Again, having more than one carrier, having more than one option, having good, reliable broadband internet service. The county will continue to pursue legislative efforts from the state and federal to eliminate any barriers and to increase the resource availability for providers to expand broadband infrastructure. You've even got $400,000 set aside for it, and working with private, open door policy, working with private providers like Beacon Towers to provide and welcome and encourage to expand the service to Goochland citizens, and support and encourage private enterprise so that there can be success along the county. That wasn't my presentation, that was yours, and you kind of took my win, but I'll be real brief with mine. Our objective is the same, to enhance the wireless coverage in this particular area for these people that live out there, and for the businesses that people work. We're going to allow, most importantly, I think as Jonathan said, that we're going to be able to provide safety to the community through Ensure 911. In addition, we're going to have the Homeland Security, which is the $40 billion. Yeah, we can pass one of these out here. FirstNet. FirstNet is the federal program that Jonathan alluded to. After 9/11, we discovered we didn't have many of the adequate security, so that's being implemented across the country. This is a FirstNet site. That means it'll be open to all different municipalities and different levels of that for public safety. Jonathan's a little old school in the sense that he said when the phone came out of his pocket on the road. That's really not the problem anymore. Sorry, Jonathan. Everyone can use a phone on the streets. What they can't use it for is when they have an accident in the home. 50% of the U.S. doesn't have landline. Facts. 79, he says 80, 79% of every 911's mobile. Half of America only get their broadband through smartphones. I'm sure there'll be a lot more with Nick here being 25. I don't think he's ever even dialed or heard a dial tone. They're laughing at you. No, they're laughing with you. So again, there's some information on the FirstNet, which is important. So we've got just some propagation maps showing the need. There's the existing towers we kind of blew in to this particular area, and there's several towers at the moment that are serving the surrounding area. Blue and green is what you want to see. Yellow and red you don't. You can see indoor. Then after the communications facility is on air, and then you can see in building, which is even a bigger area of non-service because it has to penetrate the walls of your house, the buildings you live in, and such. And it gives you a pictorial of how we fill that gap. So everyone has a connecting site handing off, and there are no gaps in the network where someone could be without service at any time. And I just wanted to mention again, could you give these out briefly? Give me one of them back, I guess I gotta read. Jonathan just talked about the fourth utility. It sounds like the fourth state or something, a state. But basically it's the sense that communications is and the cloud and everything is interconnected more than it's ever been. Interesting enough, this survey was done that home buyers put a premium on reliable wireless service, 67%. 60% of them put the house price in. So they're more concerned about that than they are. Again, they're concerned about all these things, having restaurants, having the only things that are looked at more positively are good hospitals and good schools. As I mentioned, half of the households in America are wireless only, and there's a growing amount that only get their broadband through smartphones. This just goes on and says a narrative that we've heard before. Real estate is important. People will say, well, we have some coverage, but you need coverage through everyone. The first thing someone does when they buy a house nowadays is to make sure there's coverage. I couldn't run my business, and a lot of people couldn't get their stuff done without being accessible to that. This talks about it. There's the question, okay, well then I have a tower next to me, that's gonna hurt my value of my house. That has not been proven the case. There's actually a 3% increase in the price of your home with good, solid wireless in your house. It makes an antidote. It may not be the reason someone doesn't buy your house, but they'll certainly find another home that accomplishes both the things they want and the wireless coverage. So I think it just says that if you haven't, ambiguous wireless connectivity is an amenity. Some people think it's a nice thing to have still. Most people and future people are going to look at it as a utility, as a necessity, so that they don't have to run the risk of diminishing the way that they can make money, the way that they can communicate, and everybody has a fair shot at it. That's my briefest I can do. I appreciate your time.
We're here for any and all questions that you may have.
I do. FirstNet, only supported by AT&T?
They got the nationwide contract. It was bid out to everyone. Everybody was bidding for it. It was a $40 billion contract. AT&T got the most cost-effective contract, and they got it with AT&T.
So it can only be on an AT&T tower?
No. Every municipality, every state had the option to go into the program. I believe they all have. And in that, they're supposed to give coverage across all the counties and across all the states. Now, they're using their sites, but they don't have to use just theirs. They have a separate mandate, one that says we have to do coverage at a certain level throughout all the counties to do that. And if that means building a new tower, in this particular case it does, Going on an existing tower that they happen to be on, that's another one. Going on a water tower, going on a rooftop, or going on a competitor's tower, they will do that to accomplish that goal.
That's what you call co-location?
Co-location, yes, sir, perfect, yeah. This tower is co-locatable for 4 carriers, and the need is out there for all 4. AT&T's not alone. T-Mobile has, in this particular area, either 0 or not capable. It's been mentioned Verizon. I was out there today. I have a Verizon phone. It is incapable of in-building again.
That's not true.
Okay.
Absolutely wrong. Do not state that statement. That's not true. You live just down the street.
Please don't call out. You're out of order.
He's lying.
You're out of order. Do not have that outburst again. Do you understand me?
I just telling him he can't say that he didn't get any.
Shut up.
I'm telling you to shut up.
Mister, you are out of order in this meeting. I'm asking you to keep quiet. If you want to say something, you need to say it during the public hearing, not now. You will have your chance to speak, but that chance is not now. Do you understand me? Go ahead.
There is a coverage issue in this particular area. We've had a third party look at it. AT&T in particular knows this for a fact, and we've also made it. I would just end on a positive note. There used to be a time all the carriers would build towers here and there. I think you can still see them in different areas where there's 2 towers next to that and one over here. Made it a little more difficult to people like Jonathan, but at the end of the day, almost every municipality in the country has gone around the rules that you all have, co-location, using common infrastructure so that you're not building a site here and a site there. This site will work for all the carriers to match into the networks that are already present. So, yeah.
Just a point, it says in my documentation from the county that the area is already serviced adequately for cell coverage.
I haven't seen that. You said the county gave this?
We have documents that, for our agenda, and it shows what the public meeting and so forth, things that were discussed, and it was brought up. that it
Oh,
already
yes, I
has-
see. Oh, I see what I'm.
Yeah, that was, at the community meeting, that was one of the issues brought up by those in the community. And that's what Martin was trying to touch on tonight, was the actual coverage issue in it. But there was a feeling, I think you'll hear some more of that from the folks in the room. And I can tell you this, with my AT&T phone this afternoon, it only could work as a paperweight in that area. I could not get a call out.
I do want to say one thing in all fairness to everyone. That's anecdotal, and this is run-through programs, propagation maps, drive test area. That means someone drives through, gets the signal, there's a certain dB it has to go. There's a little bit of science behind all this to be able that it connects and all. Anecdotally, if someone doesn't have coverage in a house, or does or doesn't, there's too many of those instances. But overall, at a reliable stance, just like your ordinance, it has to go to a certain speed, has to do a connection, and that it has to be placed in a network that can do all those things. And if it's not, then you're just going to have gaps.
Touch on that building again.
It seems to be that you're saying it's brand specific. If he has an AT&T coverage, he can't get a cell phone, but maybe if you had Verizon, it would. Does it?
Yes. I don't know if it's it's frequency specific.
Okay, well, no.
I know, but I don't want to, I'm not marketing for any particular
Yeah.
person here or any company. But to your point, different carriers have different networks. Funny enough, in this particular area, the surrounding towers are all pretty much being utilized by all 4 carriers. Of course, some of them are higher, some are at the lower, some have some different frequencies, but they're all trying to manage to a standard and a level that's acceptable for the frequencies that they were licensed by the FCC.
Thank you.
I have just one question. You said that, so it's 199 feet tall, but it's 128 feet from the property lines. Well, it has a 128-foot fall radius.
100, yeah, yes, sir.
This is an engineering?
Yes, sir, this is, and I have it right here. It's 199 feet tall, and what they do, and again, we'll go, Martin hates how
I have the worst analogy. We talked about 9/11. It doesn't fall, it collapses.
Okay.
It's the worst analogy, but I think everybody's ingrained in their mind how that works.
It
That
doesn't
building
fall
didn't.
like a tree.
It collapses at certain areas as a safety, and it has areas where it does collapse.
And what we do in each case is, it's certified by Virginia PE, and in this case, 128 feet.
That's fine. I didn't quite understand how that
Yeah,
was
we're
being
starting
done.
to, starting to merge there.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Morgan.
We'll now open up the public hearing. You can, you want to speak in favor or in opposition to this project, come forward to the mic, state your name, your address. You have 3 minutes. If you're speaking for a group of people, we want to know who that group of people is, and they won't be given a chance to speak, okay?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Snow. I live at 505 Cedar Run Court, about 2 blocks from the location. I don't think anybody in this room has any problem with trying to enhance the system of coverage that we would have for our cell phones and that kind of thing. Let me state one comment this way. If I were hired by the city of Richmond to design them a communication system that required me putting a cell tower in the Capitol Square, I don't believe it would get approved by the city council. And that leads to the installation of this tower. My question would be, what design dictated the location of that tower? Did AT&T do that design to locate it there? What are the regulations on moving that tower within certain feet, miles, blocks, or whatever it is? Does it have to be located at that position to give us the enhancement that you would like to have? That's one question there. So, and the other question I would have would be, for the design of it and for the location of this tower, what other locations were looked at as possible for the installation of this tower? That's where I come from. And I think the whole issue is where it's located. Thank you.
My name is Mike Mason. I live at 954 Hermitage Road. That pretty gorgeous greenhouse that you show is my house. I'm in that cutout on that diagram. Of course, I don't want a cell phone tower in my backyard. I understand cell phone needs, and I'm sure we were at this the hearing this summer, and we were told that there are going to be several, I don't know how many more towers are going to be needed in Goochland County to get the kind of service that we require. And I understand that. I'm here to voice my complaint that it's going to be right there in my backyard. I don't want to look out. I moved out to Goochland County. I'm in my dream house when I'm retired. I didn't want to look up at a cell phone tower. What bothers me is that last summer, I was told by the owners that, oh, this beacon tower, it's a done deal. We've known this for 3 years, which tells me, if you look at that red cutout diagram where my house has been cut out, that was done after they already knew about this, that I was sold a bill of goods, that I bought this house when they already knew that this cell phone tower was coming there, and no one told me. I just kind of feel like I've been violated. I wish I had known. I've been at least given the opportunity. I love that house. I love that piece of property. And the neighbors are great. They're not close. I like that. That's kind of why I moved out to, here in Goochland. But it doesn't seem fair to me that I'm buying a house when it's already known that a cell phone tower was going to go up there and I wasn't told. The other thing that bothers me, and there's another diagram, picture that they show that has the access road. I don't know if you know that property, that cell phone tower, they said it's 500 feet in from Mannequin Road. But the access road that they're going to do is closer to, there's that gorgeous house, is closer to 600 feet. See the access road that they're bringing it? That comes right along my boundary, my border, and instead of being a direct line, 500 feet from Hermitage Road, it comes in like a diagonal, which right along that piece of land there are the most gorgeous, biggest trees on that property. And I don't understand why the access road can't be made shorter, more direct. And if you've ever been to that property, that direct line back there are telephone not towers, but telephone wires. And there's already been clear-cut land right through there. So my question is, 3 minutes is up? I love to talk.
3 minutes.
I wish that the road would be straight in and not at a long diagonal. You'd cut down fewer trees and it would be less invasive.
Thank you.
My name is Del Mugford. I live at 606 Cedar Run Road in Mannequin, Sabot, Virginia. I think one of the things that they did not tell us in their presentation is back in 2012, the Classic Tax Relief and Job Creation Act, Section 6409A, states that they can add another 20 feet to this tower without any community approval. I don't think anybody knew that. I'm sure they know that. The other thing that I will say, I still have a landline, okay? So I'm not one of the 50% that doesn't. And then Realtor Magazine, they put out a survey. 94% of people that are looking at property around a cell phone tower will not buy it, or they will want to pay a lot less than what the value of the property is. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Robert Perot. I live at 905 Hermitage Road, which is one lot from the intersection of Mannington and Hermitage Road. My property is a little bit above grade of Hermitage Road. I will definitely see this tower from my front yard, my backyard, my front window. And it is visible. Now, I say it's visible because I've never known, I don't see 200 feet trees in that area at all. So, but I think I'd like to focus on two things that you all need to consider. One is is approval of this CUP a good zoning practice? And specifically, is it a good zoning practice to put cell towers of this size in this non-residential area? I've lived at this address for 12 years, and during that time, I've seen residential development move towards my house down Hermitage Road. There's a Dover Branch subdivision right across from the beautiful greenhouse. That's going to look, every time they come out of their driveway, they're going to look at that tower. Is it good zoning practice to put cell towers in residential areas, period, where we're getting more houses up and down that road, and from Mannequin down to Patterson Avenue or Route 6, it's nothing but residential homes. There can be better places to put these towers. I say that because in the application, they talk about the service area, and they say it extends south to River Road. River Road is the intersection of Route 6 and River Road, substantial distance from where this tower is to be. It says it's to be, service area includes Hockett Road. Now we know what Hockett Road, and now we're talking about the West Creek area, or near West Creek. When I see these towers, when I ride around this state, other states, I see them all the time along roadways. We can see them along 288. We can see them on Broad Street or off of Broad Street. That's fine. That's non-residential areas. So I'd like for you all to take that into consideration. The second concern I have is that you have to find there's a public necessity, I believe. I don't see a public necessity here. I see an AT&T necessity to get in this area and compete. There's no public necessity for other reasons. We talked about the public meeting. There were actually 24 people there if you include the spouses, and no one had problems with cell coverage. This, I think you understand the neighborhood, from Cedar Run, the Meadows, all the way down Mannequin Road, the Hermitage Road to an intersection with Mannequin Road. If there were residents, excuse me, if there were residents in that area, they would have complained. They don't, the residents do not believe there's a need.
Hello, my name is Tony Owens, 824 Summit Court, Mannequin Sabbath. I'd like to echo my dissent for this project, or this approval for the Beacon Towers. Jonathan from Beacon Towers, I'm sorry I didn't catch your last name, but he said he can't please everyone in this room. The one way you can please everyone, except for maybe Beacon Towers, is by not putting the tower here. I think that is the bottom line. As Mr. Perot noticed and mentioned, it's just really the wrong location. We're all in favor of cell reception, better cell reception. The stats that they were citing are national stats. They all make sense, but you know, I'm a Verizon customer. I have no problem. I also have Comcast in my house. I have no problem in my house. I have a landline as well. There's other ways around this. I think the location and the height of the tower doesn't make sense. Does it have to be 200 feet high? I mean, if this is the right location, maybe it's 100 feet high. Or maybe it's along the corridor, as was mentioned earlier, of Patterson Avenue, River Road, might be a better location. Put it next to the firehouse. Have Goochland County benefit from the revenue that comes in from AT&T or other providers using this. Why does it have to be this location? I hope you listen to the residents that you're serving and make the right decision. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Douglas. I live at 376 Perro Lane, which is in the Broad Run 4 subdivision, which is the closest residential subdivision to the north of the subject property. I was just here to point out, I was at the June meeting at which we presented the petition with 27 signatures from residents in our neighborhood opposing this. It's important to recognize that that represents a unanimous view of the neighborhood. There were no dissenters. No one said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to sign your petition because I need cell coverage. Every person that we asked signed it, and we got every property owner, except for one lot, which I think is vacant at the time, and has been since purchased. So this is not a case where there's a conflict of interest amongst the citizens of Goochland County. You don't have a list of people lining up saying we've done a study and that there's a dead zone in your coverage and we need to put it here. You have a group of people who says we don't need that and we don't want the unsightly tower that we can see from our neighborhood. That's really all you have. We began the meeting with Mr. Meyer's prayer in the interest of serving the citizens of Goochland County, and if that's what this is all about, the citizens are unanimous. The only people who want this are the lawyers from South Carolina.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioner. My name is Michael Saxon. I'm at 581 Mannequin Town Place. I'll actually probably largely benefit from this cell tower being in place. I'll have more options, but I will defer to a lot of my neighbors who live a little bit closer. I actually came here tonight for a completely different but similar topic. I believe the conversation you're having here tonight reflects the lack of broadband strategy we have as a county overall. Because if we had a clear strategy where to put towers and where not to put towers, would be very easy to decide. I'd also offer one thing for you to consider. We live in the wealthiest side of the county. That's factually known. My children have spent 2 years going to the schools out in your district, Mr. Myers. And I would implore people that want to come in and invest in our community, not only invest in areas that are already heavily populated and have cell coverage, but do sister projects in other parts of the county that have zero coverage. And I think in combination with that, if you had a real long-term strategy for broadband coverage, I think as you referenced, this fourth utility we have today, I might be the only one here with school kids, or very few, if not the only one that are going to the public school. But to hear of kids having to do their homework at McDonald's should really disappoint the commissioners and board of supervisors. And we should leverage maybe this opportunity with Beacon to get moving faster on making sure the entire county has broadband coverage.
Could you go to the slide with the aerial photo? Good evening. The original one that shows like the lot map. Thank you, that one, that's great. I don't know where the magic pointer here is. Let's see. So I'm Rhett Townsend. If you look in the picture up here, I live at 359 Perro Lane. That's approximately 885 feet from that location. My next door neighbor, the Osborns, who are also against this project, live right there. They're approximately 624 feet from this tower. I appreciate what y'all do for us. I think, as other folks have said tonight, you know, it's your job and responsibility to listen to the folks that live here. We pay the taxes here. We're not going to give you a bunch of statistics from far and abroad and all across the world. I was proud and honored to serve this community for 15 years as a volunteer firefighter and EMT in Mannequin Company 1. Never once did I run a call in that area and not be able to help those that we were going after that night or day. Run multiple calls in front of Hermitage Country Club in those 15 years, all throughout that area and around through there. Never once was a call for service not answered due to some sort of service or coverage issue with radios and or telecommunication devices that couldn't exist. So I would tell you from that standpoint, there is no need. My wife has a Sprint phone. I have a Verizon phone. I bought that house in December of 2010. When I got it, I had no cell phone service there. I wanted to not have cell phone service there. I bought a landline. We live in the country, so to speak, for a reason. We like it. I have a farm in Fluvanna County that used to have no cell service. There's a reason that's attractive to some folks. It's not an issue here in the service area. I don't drive through there every other day going, oh, you know, I can't place a call. I can place calls and talk all through those roads on my phone. If I need to call work or have a business call. They also mentioned something about businesses. There's really no businesses in that area whatsoever that are going to be impacted by this. There's Hermitage Country Club, and that's about it. That balloon test, where there was only one site that could be seen, I want y'all to remember the time of year that was done. It wasn't done in the dead of winter when there's no leaves on trees. It was done very strategically and very wisely by the group of individuals over there when the full foliage was out completely. That one of those pictures is the front of my mailbox. If you go to my backyard, as you can orient and see, you'd clearly be able to see that tower. I don't eat dinner at my mailbox in the middle of the street where the picture was taken. I eat dinner with my family in my backyard just as my neighbors do, a lot of times in the summer and in the beautiful fall and in the beautiful spring. A lot of times when there aren't leaves on the trees, and we don't want this tower sitting there ruining our view. In my opinion, if somebody wants to buy my house and I choose to sell one day and they walk around in the backyard and look up and see a cell tower, as the other gentleman, Dell, stated earlier, I think Realtor Magazine would tell you they're not going to buy. So we just ask that you please take all of our comments as your citizens into account, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Rick Gary, 360 Perro Lane. And here to voice my opposition. It's starting to get a little redundant, as you can tell, but yeah, we moved out here 4 years ago and do love it quite a bit. And just the idea of having a cell tower right here in the middle of a residential area just does not make sense to us. The gentleman made the comment that they'd met all the rules in filing and getting all this in place, but it just doesn't meet the desires of the community. Nobody's complaining about coverage to the point where we want to see that tower each day as we drive down the road. So thank you for your time tonight.
You all can stay on stage up front. You
can
come on up,
sit
just
here.
wait in
Just
line.
please,
up front.
just have a seat up front.
Okay, so my name is Scott Seneschal, and I live at 998 Mannequin Road, which is just a little down the red mark there. And we have what you assess as $1 million property, and we have 15 acres, and we do not want a tower. And who's going to pay for all the depreciation of our property because of this tower? This tower is going to be really ugly. They say, well, the base of it's going to be covered by the trees, but not the actual 200 feet. It's stick out like a sore thumb, okay? Totally residential area. I can really sympathize with the people on Dover Drive that buy these new one is listed at $635,000, and they got this thing going up. So you got to keep that in mind. And you also have to understand that there is service. I have Verizon at my house, works great, okay? Never had a problem. So I think we need to understand that this has to go someplace else. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paige Yance. I live at 1001 Hermitage Road, and I don't know how to work this thing. Is it the bottom button? Top one? Right there. That's my home. Right there. So I bought that 2.5 years ago with no knowledge of a cell phone tower potentially coming there. The gentleman that was up here earlier that lives right there, if you saw their graph earlier, they said it's 300 feet from that house, and that house. That's the length of a football field, okay? If you've ever been on a golf course, you know 100 yards is nothing. It's a pitching wedge. And so if you've been on a football field, you know a quarterback can throw a ball anywhere from 70 to 80 yards. It's not that far. And so to put that right there versus another location is absolutely absurd. It really is. I've been in the mortgage banking business for 34 years. I have numerous contacts that are appraisers, and I know the impact of what this does to value. And I will tell you that valuations will be hurt with every property around that. The fact that a new neighborhood that came in beside the property I have that has homes that are going up for $600,000 and up, when they come out of that neighborhood and have to see that tower, it's absurd. I mean, there has to be another location. And that's what this is all about. It should be in a different location. So valuations are going to be impacted. I've lived there for 2.5 years. Yes, at the club, it's not the best coverage. But where I am and when I'm traveling around the area, as others have said, it doesn't impact your coverage. So it's all about finding the right carrier and making the right decisions as a citizen. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lisa Perkins, and I live at 1005 Hermitage Road, and I wanted to cede my time to John Perkins.
Good evening. John Perkins, 1005 Hermitage Road. If I can make this laser pointer work, I actually did the wrong direction. So my house is right here, so I'm probably around 400 feet from this tower. And I want to take a little bit of different approach tonight. You've got a room full of folks behind you, or behind me rather, in front of you, that have come and spoken opposition. I work for a Fortune 200 company, and I'll tell you, when we go after a project, we wheel out researchers, we wheel out lawyers, we wheel out all the people that have all the expertise, and they're able to, with high professionalism, do what Beacon Towers is doing, which is stand up and go through all the rules and regulations and give you the data and talk about why this is such a good thing. This isn't a debate or a question around whether we should have cell service. I think we know we need cell coverage and the like. This is a discussion around, are we here to represent the residents? Or are we here to represent AT&T, right? So AT&T obviously is making an investment. Here, you've had a room full of folks like me who had things to do this evening who've said, I'm going to come out and voice opposition. We're not lawyers, we're not spokesmen, we're residents. This tower can go somewhere else. There's nothing here that is compelling us to put this tower in this location. Okay, so I would really thoughtfully ask that you represent our interest and say, okay, is this the best place to put this tower? Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Manny Alvarez, 2960 Willow Trace Lane. Thank you for listening to all of us tonight. As you know, I've spent the last 8 years on the county board. I focused a great deal on communication, internet, broadband, and cell coverage. And cell coverage is the #1 reason why I got phone calls from the entire county. In fact, the supervisors in the different districts would point people towards me because I was the most connected to it. You've heard from a lot of folks tonight that are opposed, mostly, if not, the only reason is how this tower will look. And you've heard that the tower should be in a commercial zone, but citizens don't live in the commercial zones. Towers only reach out about 3 miles with no tree line. When there's trees involved, especially the most calls I always got was in the summertime because the trees would get full of leaves and then the signal gets worse. So that radius in Goochland is shorter because of our beautiful tree canopy. You've heard the towers are too ugly to be placed near $1 million homes. We placed several towers during our project to enhance our radio system in poor neighborhoods, but those towers serve also the $1 million homes. If you take a look, two of the most expensive neighborhoods in Goochland are Rivergate, it's a gated subdivision, and West Oak. Both of those neighborhoods are adjacent to each other, and in between them, there's a tower that's off Hilton Road, which is off Route 6. It's also a 199-foot tower, but it's a lattice tower, which is much more visible, much uglier. The closest home to that tower, and I took some copies today, but I couldn't get them ready for you, but the closest home is 230 feet from that tower, and it sold recently for $680,000. The home next to it is $728,000. In Rivergate, there's a 3-acre lot that's for sale for $390,000. It's one of the few lots left in Rivergate. The home next to it, which is also about 240 feet from the tower, is valued at $1,038,000. And next to that, there's a home for $2 million. When a few years ago, a tower was proposed for Miller's Lane, and there were a lot of folks opposed, and they said, oh, there's a tower, there's a home that can't be sold because it's backing up to a tower. It was a $680,000 home. That home was built after the tower was already up. So those folks knew the tower was going to be there. Time's up?
Okay, time's up.
That was a quick 3 minutes.
Thank you. Oh, what did you say your name was?
You don't need to know.
Okay, anyone else?
Good evening. I'm David DeVise. I live at 604 Joe Brook Lane, and have another house that I might like to sell someday on First Flight Lane, the golf course, which is just outside where Perro is on that photograph. And I'm just here to add my support to the folks that oppose the cell tower for many reasons. I think the flavor of this area, especially the eastern part of the county, is such that everyone that I drive by keeps their property nice, and I believe the impact of a cell tower is going to diminish the value and the saleability of the area, and I would hope that you could find another location for it. I think that there would be even more people here. I, for one, was just reminded of this last week, and because I had heard it had just been a dead issue, and I didn't receive the notification, but luckily a friend reminded me of it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Larry Weber with 904 Hermitage. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak against this proposal, but I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different angle. Safety, and that simply is the folks that live on Cedar Run Road and where it meets Hermitage will remember about 3 years ago that lightning hit an oak tree and blew about 40 feet of bark off of that tree. What assurance do we have that this tower isn't going to be a lightning beacon to the folks that are living right around this thing? That is a serious safety concern that we need to look at because everybody's now vulnerable. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Is this already turned on or whatever?
Yep.
Maybe this is a ridiculous thing to bring up, but we've been paying for.
Name and address.
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry. Karen DeVise, his wife. And we have property on First Flight Lane and in the Meadows on Joe Brook Lane. And we have owned the First Flight property for 10 years, and I think it was about 9 years ago that we had quite an earthquake in this area. And if this thing starts, being subject to an earthquake and all starts falling apart or a tornado and blowing all over the place, I think that map is very misleading because the 25 acres looks huge on there, but all these little black lines are on properties that are probably about 2 acres for it because everyone has a well and a septic field, and you can't build on anything real small. Those are good-sized properties around there, and they're pretty close. I mean, that's a dense area. If something can this thing come apart and start blowing debris all over the place? And I don't think that's too much of a comfort to have something 200 feet tall that can come flying through your house in bad weather. So, thank you. That's all I had to say.
Anyone else? Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. Oh, you want to say
We'd like to just respond to a couple of these, most certainly the safety issues. The lightning rod, as far as this, the tower is, all towers do have they have a lightning rod thing. They're totally, there's extra grounding that goes straight down. It's dispersed out, and that's something that's done as an engineering thing on all towers, especially ours, and to be able to continue so it doesn't damage the expensive equipment that's there for all this stuff. Number two, about the possibility, you coming from Charleston, South Carolina, we know about a little bit about wind. These are all built, over-engineered. If a hurricane comes through, there won't be anything left, maybe not up here. A tornado, these will be standing. They're built to a much, much higher commercial standard than any of the homes are. The fall zone, they're designed to collapse and fall, so the safety in that regard is paramount. I think there was a couple other questions. Just to let you know, we signed a lease on March 18th, 2018. That's when that was, and we started working right before then. That was the first time I ever knew about it. There's been a lot of talk, and I think rightfully so, about the emotion of a tower being there. You all have a standard. You put the balloon test. We did it. When we did it, it was not seen by any of these. It was the county was out there, and unless someone says they could see it from another spot, we are not aware of that. So when the people talking, I live here and I love here, there's tree cover everywhere. To see a tower from a distance, you have to have some perspective. This particular area, you can't see the forest through the trees. But again, that's not for me to say. That balloon that you see up there is a 7-foot balloon. Looks like a little party balloon. It's a 7-foot balloon. It's out there. We did the photo sims to figure out what it would look like. The other question I just would like to hand out, if you could, is just some information about the values for a study that was done about diminishing values. This country would diminish to nothing if there were cell towers everywhere. Well, there's 500,000 of them. They're everywhere. They're like pregnant women. Once you start looking for them, they're everywhere. Yeah, by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
I didn't mean that. I just pregnant. I must have heard it earlier. But when you see all, again, this is when you're focusing, you cannot see this from these different angles because of the tree cover, because of the perspective. The gentleman's right. We didn't go in anybody's backyard to do this. You know, I mean, there is a limit to what we can do, but that was the rules that we were under. We found what we believe to be one of the best locations where there are people, where there's a need, and there's just no evidence that there'll be, if you can't see it, it can't diminish anything. And that's, it is seen in one road where it comes in. Again, that's pretty miraculous in our opinion. The driveway. We're open to moving that driveway. I was out there today, actually, again, looked at that, and staff recommendation, we moved on the property to be 500 feet to be away, and the driveway kind of stayed where it was. The straight line, I would beg against it. Then you can see straight down the road, and you can see the tower. That's why we curved it, so that would fade away. But we can do that another way, maybe getting on the other side of the easement and coming in. And again, so you couldn't, the power lines there, he's rightfully so. You can see the power lines go straight through. They're cut down, and they go right over. You can see them on the aerial. So we can revise that. The coverage, I think there was a little miscommunication. Coverage down on this side, coverage over here. It's like a donut. You're covering the outside of the donut. You've got to get in that middle there. When you move it over a certain amount of feet, you're moving it over hundreds the other way. To meet the criteria of where people are, where they use. As far as no businesses out there, I'm sure that there's a lot of people that aren't here tonight because they assume that you're going to do this, that you're going to bring services to them, and they don't have to come out to say, let's do this. I understand that if you live close to it, but that is not the case. There's a ton of people that rely on this, from real estate to construction to landscaping to people doing business out of their homes to people doing business, around and moving. And that's just the environment we're in today. those were some of the things that I took notes of. Jonathan may have something else. I appreciate it.
Martin, thank you. And board, thank you. I'm sorry we've kept everyone from their suppers tonight. We apologize. Just in parting, I think some of the best testimony I heard was from Mr. Alvarez. And what he got to was the point where it's a network. It's countywide. We're all in it together. As you drive through Goochland County, your phone works. It's because a tower is next to someone's house or business. We can't say certain areas are better than others. We're in it together. It's a common term in zoning called the common burden of citizenship. We're in it together, guys. We're trying to have a broadband network that the county deserves, equivalent to Henrico County, equivalent to the other counties in the state. We're in it together. Take a look at Section 20. If I missed something, I'm sorry, but I really feel when you take a strong look at Section 20, we met the rules. But again, we're in it together. As these folks travel through other parts of Goochland, they get to use the towers next to someone else's house. But we did our best job. 25 acres, incredible tree cover, no lights, monopole design. We did our best job. I thank y'all for your time.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
One of our residents said that you could add 20 feet of height if you wanted to without county approval. Is that true?
There is, yeah, and this is again how Washington does business. In the Middle Class Tax Relief Act of 2014, Section 6409 allows a 20-foot extension. AT&T is only looking for 195 feet, and we've designed the other carriers below it. But there is that as a federal right.
If you add that, will you then have to add a light?
Yes, sir. If you went over it, in the United States, over 200 feet requires air nav elimination.
Is that something you all would be willing to say you wouldn't do?
Yeah,
Is that
yes,
something that
yes, sir.
It is?
You can
would
put it in
proffer
the.
that you would not put a light on it?
Can we do that,
You would offer
Counselor?
that as a proffer? Yeah.
So, yeah, we would. There's no intention of that, and that would probably be wise.
May I,
I'm not allowed to ask you to do it. I'm just asking if that is something that's possible.
We would offer that as a condition of approval, that we never exceed 200 feet.
there is, I believe it's condition number 3 states that number 4, thank you, that the maximum height is 195, so
They would not be allowed to do it.
currently the way that.
With county regulations, even though federal would allow them to do it.
Correct, without coming in and having it.
I got you.
But if we add that, I just think that would be a safety.
We would make that an absolute condition.
Gentlemen, good evening. If I could just clarify, I'm over here.
I'm sorry.
So it's this is not a rezoning, so there's no proffers. So there's conditions on the CUP, and we do have the 199-foot maximum. So there's no proffers.
What say you, any comments?
So, I don't know who to ask this question to, but Mandy brought up the fact that they will extend coverage for 3 miles. This is the best site within 3 miles of the area that needs the coverage. Is that what we're seeing?
That would be a question for the applicant.
That's debatable. My best location, your best location, his best location, it's art in the way you look at it. I did forget something. Everything that I forgot, not in my backyard. No one wants it in their backyard. I understand that. With that stipulation, you just couldn't never do this. Downtown, there's a tower right out here in the middle of Goochland, which is the county right out here. I just happened to notice with all the microwaves and the stuff. It's in the center of this county, in the center of this area. I assume it's here to cover all of us. So, but really to get this, looking at that area, there are a bunch of 5-acre and this not suitable. We have a landowner that is willing to burden their property to do this. It is covered through the photo sims and through the balloon test, 199 feet up in the air. That's where it could be seen. I think that says volumes.
Thank you.
Mr. Duke, to help, I think, show your question, we did have the, oops, sorry, I'm pointing at the wrong thing. The coverage map. I don't know if that helps answer your question, kind of talking about the amount of, as he described it, as the donut. So just imagine like the donut covering certain areas. Does that help?
Yeah. Thank you.
That's the question. As a planning commission, have you planned out where we need cell towers in the county?
That is not our responsibility to plan out exactly where specific things are going. In the future, we follow the zoning. We help write the zoning laws, and all of the cases that come in front of us have to comply with the zoning laws.
So whose responsibility as a county is it to plan that out?
If I could just answer, Joanne Hunter, Director of Community Development. The county did just recently, about 3 months ago, announce our broadband strategy. And actually, we had an update to that broadband strategy at the board meeting yesterday or Tuesday. I'd be happy to get with the citizen and get that information to them.
There's a question then.
Gentlemen, I just wanted to remind the commission that the public hearing is over.
Yeah, the public hearing is over. Sorry, because okay, gentlemen. Well, I have a few comments to make. This is probably 8th or 9th cell phone tower case that I have sat on. And conditional use permits and zoning permits, when they come before us, we have, we listen to what the public thinks, and we want to know that everything, we want the public to know that everything that we approve it within the framework of the existing zoning laws, and everything that we disapprove, that's done within the framework of the zoning laws. Cell phone towers have become something like prisons. Everyone knows we need prisons, but nobody wants a prison in their near them. Everybody knows we need cell phone coverage, but we want the cell phone towers in someone else's backyard. It simply does not work like that all the time. A lot of people complain about it's going to negatively affect our property values. There's absolutely no evidence that any property values in Goochland County or the surrounding counties have been negatively affected by cell phone towers. That simply is a myth. So we just want to set you straight on that. Gentlemen,
Our job is to say whether it meets that.
and it does.
It does. So I would have to move to approve it as it's written, that it meets them.
Mr. Pillar?
I don't second.
I second it.
I think it's interesting that the District 5 representative is not here.
And Mr.
Please,
Rockachali
please,
noted
please,
the
no
country-
comments from the public. The public hearing has
The
ended.
public hearing has ended, okay? You're not second? Yes, okay, I'm second. All in favor? Aye.
Nay.
The motion to.
The ayes have it. Miss, any old business, Ms. Parker?
No, sir, no old business and no
Any other business?
No, sir.
You know,